Well, kia ora koutou katoa whanau, welcome along. Ko Quentin Toka Wengua, e hononga o Te Raki, Northern Regional Alliance, ACE RMO, e mahi ahau. Tēnā koutou, welcome along. Today's webinar is being co-hosted by Mid Central District Health Board, Palmerston North Hospital, and we've got a team of DHB and RMO representatives who'll be taking you through their presentation this afternoon. Also, just feel free to ask any questions using the Q&A function as per normal. Those will be typed through and most likely be asked at the end of the presentation. So I'll ask Christine, I'll hand over to Christine. If you can just take yourself off mute, Christine, if you don't mind, and introduce your team, and then go ahead, and all the best luck for your presentation today.
Thank you and welcome everybody. I'm Christine Wood and I'm the Manager of the Medical Administration Unit here at Mid Central District Health Board. We're delighted to have you with us this afternoon to hear a little bit about our DHB and why we think it would be a great place for you to start your medical career.
Hello everyone, thank you for tuning into our DHB talk today. My name is Barry Schmidt and I'm the PGY2 representative today. So any questions for me, happy to answer it.
Hi everyone, my name is Shiva. I'm one of the PGY1s that started this year at Mid Central. So I can answer what I can from my minimal experience.
Kia ora koutou, ko Janine Stevens Toka Wengua. I'm a public health physician and the Director of Medical Training and a PES here at Mid Central.
Cool. So we're kind of just going to share our presentation today. We've got a little bit to tell you about our city, a little bit to tell you about our hospital and our ACE recruitment process and what we expect from you and your applications. And then Shiva and Barry will tell you a bit more about what it's actually like being a PGY1 here at Mid Central. So in case you don't know, because Palmy's one of those places you don't actually travel through very often, mostly you go kind of around it depending on where you're heading if you're travelling in the North Island. So we're in the lower North Island, as you can see with the little mark on the calendar, on the map, sorry, big pardon. We thought we would show you our city because Palmerston North is one of those cities that kind of lacks a little bit of sex appeal. It's not kind of one of those coastal cities. People kind of think it's not really much of a place to go, but actually it's a fabulous little city to live in. There's some really cool things. And so we've just got some photos just to give you a bit of a glimpse of what our city looks like. In our hospital. So what do we have to offer here at Palmerston North? So Palmerston North City is located in the heart of the Manawatu in the lower North Island. There's beautiful walks and runs and mountain biking tracks and stuff all in and around the river, lots of outdoor things to get involved with. We're also really close to lots of other places. So people think, well, it's not a coastal city, I will never get to go to the beach. It's only 30 minutes to the beach and you're travelling at 100 Ks, whereas in the city, you probably get to the beach in a similar time and travel at 5 Ks. It's only 2 hours to Wellington, 2 hours to the ski fields, and then Hawke's Bay, New Plymouth, Martinborough are all in easy reach for weekend getaways. And we've got some lovely photos coming up later of a weekend in Martinborough, I believe. There's the beach. That will be Foxton or Tangimoana, I suspect. So Palmerston North boasts more cafes and restaurants per head of population than anywhere else in New Zealand. There's no traffic jams. Getting to work is a breeze and heading out of town for the weekend even easier. No sitting in traffic for 2 hours to get north of Otaki if you're coming up out of Wellington, or however many hours to get out of Auckland. It's a flat city, but we're surrounded by the ranges, so there are other obviously places where you can go if you want to hike or bike, etc. But it's a good way to get to work is on a bike or walking. There's a good airport, lots of good accommodation, and there's gyms, etc. Lots of things to do, and it's actually really easy to buy houses and cheaper than a lot of other places. Here's just some local gyms, a local bar, the local coffee shop.
Right across the road from
where the RMOs go every day.
Yeah, pretty much.
For coffee. We obviously do have a staff cafe as well, but it's quite a tradition here that in the morning a large number of RMOs will head across the road to Zest and grab themselves a coffee. There's actually 2 other cafes within a similar distance, actually, so we're quite well off for nice coffee shops and good coffee. So what about our DHB and our hospital? So Mid-Central District Health Board covers quite a large area. Peka Peka in the south, which is just north of Waikanai, Apiti in the north, and it stretches from the Tasman Sea to the Pacific Ocean. A lot of people don't realise, but we actually go all the way out to Herbertville and other areas out on the east coast, as well as going out to the west coast. We've got about 350 beds and we provide most clinical services except plastics, cardiothoracic and neurosurgery. Our cancer treatment service is a tertiary service, so we provide for a larger region, and it means there's a lot of really interesting pathology. And Barry's doing oncology at the moment. He's haematology right now and has done medical oncology. So he might be able to talk a little bit more about some of what you see in those areas. About 160 SMOs and 170 house officers and registrars. It's a really collegial place to work.
Absolutely. So in this hospital, one of the great benefits of working in Palmerston North Hospital is definitely how easy it is to actually just talk to other services and other people. And within a few months of working here, you pretty much get to know most of the major people and players, most of the registrars, most of the services as well. So phoning and doing referrals and things like that becomes exponentially easier as you work here. Very seldom you'd ever get someone growly on the phone. It's very easy to organise imaging and imaging scans in this hospital as well. So overall, just very collegial, very easy and very nice people to work with, yeah, generally.
A comment about the scans as
well? Oh, yeah. So in this hospital, so in some hospitals, obviously getting scans can be a real mission. So phoning up, radiologists and being abused for your indications for the scan for a few minutes at times and being declined. In this hospital, really what we do for scans is we actually walk down to the or to the CT reporting room or to MRI, and we'll sometimes talk to a radiologist, but mostly it's radiographers who we talk to. And knowing a little bit of information about the patient, we usually very quickly get scans organised. Very seldomly would get turned down, to be honest. So very quick, easy processes in that regards. Yeah.
And it's a very compact hospital. So walking down to CT or MRI is actually like a 2 or 3 minute job in terms of physically getting from the ward down. It's not like you've got to walk for miles and miles to do that. So it's quite a compact hospital. What can you do if you come to Palmerston North? So I've put up a list of the PGY1 runs. One of the things that is a little bit different here than some hospitals is you can do obstetrics and gynaecology in quarter 4, and you can do psychiatry in quarter 4. When you get into PGY2 and above, there's a slightly bigger range, including the med-onc, rad-onc, haematology, some slightly more advanced subspecialties of medicine like cardiology and renal, paediatrics, emergency medicine, and we have community-based attachments available in both general practice and hospice. PGY3, you can apply for an ICU SHO position in PGY3. And that's a really good position. It's really highly competitive for people who want to progress potentially either into an ICU career, an anaesthetics career, or to complement training in emergency medicine or general medicine. So lots of people are really keen to do that ICU run.
And we're one of the only DHBs. There's only 2 or 3, a very small number of DHBs that offer that at an SHO level.
I believe so, yeah.
Generally core procedural skills as well, because you do a lot of procedural skills in that position. So yeah, if there's any other training program that's quite procedurally based, which can include radiology and others as well, that position is incredible into experience. Yeah.
It's very hands-on. My partner did the role, not me. So from me having talked to him, he definitely said it was very helpful for him to get into his anaesthetics training program. You spend effectively 12 hours overnight by yourself as potentially a PGY3, looking after acutely unwell people, and you're solely reporting back to a boss to call them in or make acute clinical decisions. So it makes you grow up very quickly.
So this is just a little bit of information about what we're looking for in your ACE application. So we really do like a cover letter. If you're really keen to come to Palmy and to Mid Central, it's good to put in your cover letter why you want to come. And if you've got links to the region, then that sort of information is really good to know. When I'm looking at the CVs, so myself and one of our other pre-vocational educational supervisors are the ones who look at all the CVs from every applicant that puts in and ranks our DHB. And so I'm looking to get a bit of a feel for you as a person, in addition to what you've done, obviously, as a medical student. So what you do in your spare time, what you've done in jobs, including holiday jobs, if you've got any other previous degrees or qualifications. I guess one of the things I'm looking for is that you've got a bit of work-life balance, because that's really important once you're a PGY1. It is a big job when you first start, and it's good to have some things that you do outside of work that give you some time out and some ways to de-stress when you're not working. We don't interview. I know some DHBs do, but we don't. However, we do welcome visits or phone calls. If you want to come and see us, we're really happy to show you around. We'll normally manage to find a house officer who's got a little bit of time to actually show you the hospital and tell you the real story about us, not our version, not my version. And also too, it's good to know a little bit about you. If you've got particular reasons why you want to come to Palmy, then it's good to have that conversation. The other thing we're making available for 2022, if people are interested, is the possibility of being part-time. But what I would like is for you to contact me directly to discuss what you might be looking for in terms of a part-time position, because it just needs a little bit of lead-in time if we were going to have people working part-time, but we're keen to have those discussions and see what the demand might be for part-time work. What else makes us a good DHB? We've got a very keen team of house surgeons who at the moment are working to help us develop our teaching program. We did a lot of work at the end of last year and the beginning of this year on our PG1 program, and I think Barry will probably talk to that a little bit more about that later as well. And we're now in the process of looking at our PGY2 program. Most of the departments have their own teaching programs as well, so there's lots of opportunities for learning when you're on your different runs. We have Janine, and she can talk a little bit about the role of the Pairs Māori.
Yeah, so this year we were very pleased to have almost a record number, I think, of Māori PGY1s join us here at Mid Central DHB, and we're really keen as a DHB to support workforce development for Māori, doctors as well as across all sorts of disciplines. And so one of the things we decided to do was to introduce a Pairs Māori role, so a pre-vocational educational supervisor who is Māori, and that's me. I was up to about 6 months ago, I was part of our Paora Māori Health Directorate team here at the DHB. So I've got really good connections in with that team, along with Māori doctors across the hospital campus, and we also connect up with some of our colleagues in primary care and things as well. So really keen to support Māori doctors here at Mid Central DHB.
And we also have trainee interns. So we have a group of trainee interns who are based here for the majority of the year, except often for their elective time. And then we have others who come here for particular parts of their training. Some come for general practice, some come for a PEDS run. We've got a person here at the moment doing their elective in medical administration, which is, I believe, the first time in the country that a trainee intern's done their elective in medical administration, working with our chief medical officer. So we always have students here. Out at Dannyverk, which is a rural town, they have fifth-year medical students doing the rural immersion. So as a first year, you get the opportunity to be teaching and mentoring the next cohort of students coming through into medicine.
I can't really kind of explain how important that part is to our learning as well, because when you have a trainee intern on the team, they not only help a lot, but they also force you to be very critical of how you perform as a doctor. It's hard work. It can be really hard work, and it can take up some time to actually do the teaching, but overall it will make you a much better doctor in the long run as well. So I guess in the next part of this presentation, I was hoping to talk a little bit more about some of the structures in this hospital, and how things kind of work for me, and how things have kind of changed a bit in the hospital as well. So I've kind of split it up into a few sections so we can get our head around it. So I'll talk a little bit about the orientation and what that looks like in our hospital. And following that, a couple of the more specific opportunities that you will have here as a house surgeon. We'll talk a bit about the weekly teaching program that we've designed and what that looks like, the cultural teaching, as well as protecting wellbeing, as well as some other structures in the hospital that are worth knowing about. So in terms of orientation week, this is actually a really important week in this hospital, and we've recently just had lots of discussions about what this should involve and what's important to people who are coming into a hospital for the first time. It's a scary time, it's an apprehensive time for many people, but it's also an exceptionally exciting time to be working because you're learning so much so quickly. So really a lot of it's kind of centered around how we make people feel comfortable in the hospital. So that looks like actually showing them things that they should really know a lot about and get familiar with before entering the hospital environment. This includes emergency call sort of simulations. We also focus on the bonding aspect of getting a bunch of people together who are going to work with each other, hopefully for a few years' time. You meet your supervisors at this stage, and we also have a couple of sections on vascular access in the hospital. And we do recently have restarted our amazing race, which is kind of our attempt to show you around our entire hospital while simultaneously getting you to do the important paperwork and also making some phone calls and also realising how the processes work in our hospital as well. So that's run by a bunch of the house surgeons who are sometimes PGY 1 or PGY 2, and it goes in sections and you kind of race around the hospital doing different tasks, and we hope that it's going to be something that facilitates a good entry into the hospital. There's an ATLS emergency course, which you guys have probably done, which has a repetition here, which is important because you go over things that might be, well, relevant in the first week of you working here. One of the most helpful things that I found when I was in this orientation in PGY 1 was the shadow shifts that we did. So usually we buddy you up with somebody who is a house surgeon in the run that you're going into, and they'll basically have some longer evening shifts, and they'll kind of introduce you to things, they'll get you to do things, they'll make you review patients, and they'll just be there for general advice. And our hope is that the people that you get the opportunity to do this with will be continued mentors for you while you're in the hospital. So if you need help, there's never not someone there to help you, okay? And we'll also have a tips and tricks session from house surgeons and hopefully one or two registrars as well who can tell you a little bit about things you should know. Now, in our hospital, there's so much experience to be had. I can't stress this enough. For me, going to my first hospital was really about trying to become, well, a place where I can have a good time for one, and also a place where I can become the best doctor I possibly can be. It's a practical hospital, Palmerston North, so you'll get lots of practical experience, and certain runs will have more opportunity than others, but generally all of them will offer a lot of opportunity for you to review patients, do practical procedures. A few stand out. Orthopedics, you end up being a little bit of a medical person in the ward. You do a lot of really difficult stuff. It's really, really interesting and really fun, and renal as well is quite a difficult but very rewarding run to do in our hospital. When the time comes, when you go through your PGY 1 training and 2 training, you're going to start thinking about where you want to be in the future, and registrar opportunities come quite regularly in this hospital. So it's not that hard to step up in this hospital if you want additional experience at a higher level. So it's a great hospital if you really want to go somewhere quickly.
We've probably had, I was just trying to do a little quick count in my head, I think probably about 8 of our PGY 3s this year, so they were our last year's second years, are now in registrar positions.
Yes, yeah.
So that's quite a good rate of people being able to step up at PGY 3 level into a registrar position.
Yeah, and having known these people that have stepped up, I can well assure you that these people aren't drowning. They're actually doing really well, and some of them have come leaps and strides in terms of their practice clinically. A couple of other things that are good to mention in terms of the opportunities here is oncology and pediatrics as well. We regularly give funding to people who are interested in these specialties to do the diplomas that are associated with them. I have a few friends who are doing both of these diplomas at the moment as well, and reaping real rewards in terms of their practice and what they're learning. We've already mentioned the ICU SHO job, but once again, just like to stress how important and how great of an opportunity that is in this hospital. Yes, it's competitive, but generally, if you want to go into any of these specialties, ICU or anaesthetics included, or others that provide practical opportunity, this is a great thing to have on the CV. In our hospital, we do ED 6-month placements as well from third year onwards. Second year onwards. ED is a tough place to work anywhere, but in our hospital, we recently had a lot of additional SMOs who have joined the hospital. And it's becoming a very hands-on and a very good learning environment in this hospital as well. So it's a great place to do that. As well, I just wanted to make a quick comment on this. When I've just mentioned all of these diplomas, there's continual medical education funding in this hospital, of course, in all hospitals, but to get it here obviously just requires a bit of support from your peers, and also some obvious desires to potentially do that for your vocation in the future, and you'll readily potentially be funding for that. So great opportunity there as well. Now, I just wanted to give you a bit of an idea of the teaching that we have in this hospital because it's important to many people. Now, like most hospitals, we have two sort of sessions per week that are about an hour long from 12:30 to 1:30, which were predominantly didactic initially, but we've redesigned our training program for PGY1s in particular, and we've grouped this into 4 sections throughout the year. So for the first section of the year, we'll really be focusing on everything you need to know as a house surgeon. So, common ward calls, emergency calls, practical things you need to know. We've added some simulation training throughout the year as well. What you go into second is consolidating all of that knowledge. The third section of the year is really looking outside of medicine, all the kind of things we would like you to be interested in or be aware of in this region. And finally, in the last quarter, we're trying to focus on preparing you for what's going to come in second year and the runs that are associated with second year. So that's how we've structured it. We're trying quite hard to make it very registrar-led because in many of our opinion, registrars provide some of the best teaching because they're close to our level, but also have that slightly higher level knowledge that's really beneficial to people who are in the PGY1 and 2 levels. Alongside this, we do TI teaching sessions, which are simulations every Monday. So if you're interested in teaching or being engaged with teaching, you can either join our teaching committee to help produce more resources and do the planning involved with this, or you can help with the simulation sessions as well, which are very beneficial. Now, following all of this, PGY2 teaching is going through a transformational process in our hospital too. It's really important to us that we continue this teaching into the PGY2 levels as well. So we're in the process at the moment of kind of creating a more robust teaching schedule for that too. Now, alongside all of these kind of teaching opportunities, there's department-specific teaching. So most of the departments in this hospital have their own teaching sessions. So hematology, for example, will always have an hour to a 2-hour process per week. And that's in addition to grand rounds and other kind of specialty sort of teaching sessions that happen in each run. ED and PEDS tend to do their own simulations as well, and they've got their own simulation area in ED for this every single week. Now, a bit of discussion in our hospital has been happening about the teaching fellow, so having somebody who's dedicated to really overseeing how the program is run and tracking progress and making sure that the students' needs are being met. And that's something that's becoming increasingly relevant in other DHBs, and so we're hoping to fulfill this at some stage as well. Now, we get some resources that are provided by our library here, lots of online books and resources and textbooks that we can get on our library. And we're currently trying to receive some more funding for additional online resources, which really provides skills that are sometimes not very well taught in medical school. For example, how to assess an ECG really accurately and effectively, or look at a chest X-ray, for example. It's not always really well taught in medical school. So hoping to get some more funding for processes like that as well. Now, it's kind of important for us to also just mention the cultural teaching, and that we're trying to kind of transform here too. So I think I'm enrolled in a couple of courses later on this year that I've recently been given my information for. One of this is a cultural competency course, and there's also a Te Tiriti o Waitangi training course as well. Many of us have received some of this training, but when you're working at DHB, which has so many Māori people coming through the service, it's very important to get additional training in these areas, and you learn that very quickly when you move up here. We also have looking to add monthly block teachings into our training course, and have some Te Reo Māori lessons basically coming forward for the program as well, to kind of aid your work on the ward too. Now, I just wanted to mention this. So we have a current RMO space, and there's a development happening very soon. Do you know when it's starting at the moment?
We're meant to be moving in the middle of June.
June, great. So by
the time you come, we'll be well in there.
Yes, exactly. So I just want to make that stress that. So there'll be a new RMO space happening in this hospital very soon. I've kind of don't have pictures of the space yet, obviously, but I've just got this kind of overlay of what this might look like. And just to stress that there'll be a good kind of RMO lounge area. People can be together, hang out in between shifts, be there during nights, for example. There'll be a work and study area with desks and places to sit and do study if need be. And also, we're trying to transform how our sleeping arrangement happens in this hospital. Many hospitals will have 1 or 2 beds, and a house surgeon, for example, might be sent away to the couch or to the floor to sleep. I know that because I visited other DHBs in the process as well for ACE. But what we're trying to do is potentially create separate rooms.
Or at least separate spaces.
Separate spaces for people to have a separate space so they can get into bed and know that they won't be interrupted during nights when they're trying to sleep, which is immensely important, especially on a Friday when you're trying to reverse your schedule back to normal again. And we're happy to voice some questions about that later as well. But this is an exciting development for us.
And just one of the things that we find a real positive here at the DHB from the point of view of the RMO unit is that we are located right beside the lounge.
Yes.
And we will continue to be located beside the lounge. And that's really good because it means we can kind of keep an eye on people. If we see people coming in looking a bit distressed, we can kind of pull them in and give them that, pastoral care that they need. And there will be days when you have a really bad day or something happens and you just need someone to talk to. So we like the fact that we're located next to the RMO lounge, and we're pleased that we're going to continue to be with the new development.
It's a really important point, actually, because, it's really close by, so they do see us a lot. And I can give quite a few examples of when I've walked past the MAU going towards the RMO room, and one of the ladies in there have come out and said, we've noticed that you haven't had leave for some time, and there's a block of a week here and another block of a week here. Would you like to take the leave? I didn't even have to ask for it. They actually came and found me and told me that I could have the leave if I wanted it. And I, of course, took it because it was awesome. No regrets. So that kind of leads us quite seamlessly into the leave applications in this hospital. Now, everybody has their own experience of this, but for me personally, I have very seldomly had difficulty getting leave in this hospital. In terms of comparing DHBs, this can be very variable. But here, generally, my experience is the people that lead the MAU generally work really hard to find leave for people. And obviously, it depends on how much notice you give people. If you give them 3 days notice, it's going to be tricky for them to find cover, as you can imagine. So I do recommend giving it as early as possible. And sometimes people give Christmas leave in January. So things like that get added in quite early. I've had the last 2 Christmases off in this hospital, and I handed one of my applications in June. So, it's still possible, and they do work really hard to make that easier, in my perspective. So try and get it in a couple of weeks early. 28 days is the general notice that they talk about there, but I've handed in 2 weeks notice and it's been accepted. So.
And as a peers, it's something that I always talk to my interns about every time I meet with them is, what are your leave plans? Because it's really important for your health and well-being to ensure that you are well rested when you can. Sometimes you have certain things on during the year that you really want to save your leave for, and that's fine too. But also just recognising that it is a steep learning curve. It can be a tough time sometimes as a first and second year house officer. So, we're constantly just checking in and making sure that people are able to access the leave that they need to keep them really, really well, keep you happy, keep you things ticking over nicely. So And
you've got particular things that you're wanting to attend, like you're getting married, obviously, is a really important one, but maybe your sister's getting married or you've got a family event or something. The sooner you can let us know those sorts of things, the better, because it is sometimes, if you've got specific dates that you want, it can be difficult if other people also want those dates. And I guess particularly long weekends when there might be several big events that are on for people, across the RMO workforce. But if you've got some flexibility to say, look, I wouldn't mind having a week off sometime sort of September, October, then normally we can find something,
Absolutely.
I think another good thing to stress as well, being a small hospital, it's not just the MAU that does that. I think when colleagues have been kind of struggling in the last 2 years, everyone knows if somebody's going through a hard time. If someone's in the ED, for example, and they're struggling with the hours or the shift work, everybody knows that person's struggling with being there. So people try their best to help them. We have a kind of a group, PGY1 to kind of 2 WhatsApp group, and it's very common for someone to say, I can't do this line, I can't do this procedure, I'm unable to see this person in pre-admits. Can I please get some help? And I think it would be quite uncommon for somebody not to get the help if they need it. So we try and be quite supportive in a small hospital like this. So it's important to take note of that as well. So just talking about the cafeteria. It's got a cafeteria. It's kind of it goes through new management because it's a competitive contract. So it's happened quite recently for us. Overall, the food in this new contract, in many people's opinion, has been better. Tastes better, it's not too bad. We've got a couple daily meal options, a couple salad options per day. They're trying quite hard to improve the health of the food that's offered. There's still some bad things, which isn't necessarily a terrible thing. So sometimes when you're on a set of nights or on a long shift, sometimes a thing of hot chips can be like the best thing in the entire world occasionally. there's a baking cabinet. And now when you go into nights in this hospital, you can actually order. There's an online sort of, I think, a link. I haven't done it yet, but yeah, you can order the food that you want. So when you're on nights, it'll be in a little bag for you with your name on it in the fridge. So you actually have a bit of a choice in what you receive as opposed to having just a couple of sandwiches in the fridge. You know?
So at the moment it's just Google Docs based, but we're trying to look at whether we can have that sort of a little bit more refined. But the idea behind it is that we were finding that you would never, if they just put up food, it was never the right combinations. You know, there might be 6 vegetarian options, and that particular night duty there was only 1 vegetarian, and the other people aren't so keen on eating the vegetarian option. Sometimes there'd be meals that people didn't want, sometimes there'd be sandwiches people didn't want. So I think in general this will waste less food, but also give you what you feel like eating at 2 o'clock in the morning. Yeah,
absolutely. I was actually going to ask Sheba as well, like, how have you found leave, and how have you found the kind of process of the KTAs and PGY1 here?
I think leave's been really easy, like you said. Effectively, you will hear back within the day if your leave's approved or not. So it means that you can, make other arrangements or try to sort out other dates that will work for you. Yeah. But they try really hard to make sure that you get the dates that you want. I think it's important that they also try to make sure people get at least like a week of leave per rotation, which I know in a lot of other DHBs, it's not feasible. A lot of people end up getting their leave declined for about 6 to 9 months. So you almost go for that long without any leave, apart from weekends and things. Yeah. So yeah, that's good. And the cafeteria, I think, has been a definite upgrade since we switched over in December. I'm vegetarian, so I think it's very well catered for, like, especially vegetarian people. And I know for the couple of people that we have in the hospital that are gluten-free, because our cafe doesn't cater for it, they just get reimbursed that money. I know in a lot of other DHBs that's not possible. So it's inclusive. In terms of having a social life in Palmerston North, I think a lot of people think that it's not really a bustling city, so there's not much to do here really. But because we're a relatively small DHB, there's only like 19 PGY1s. So the smaller the hospital, the more social people are, I think. And that's definitely the case for the new set of people that have come in this year. These are some pictures from last weekend. We all went to Martinborough, about 16 of us. Went away to Martinborough to do some wine tasting for the weekend. It was really good. It was quite easy to organise, and Martinborough's only an hour and a half away. So it was a quick trip. We left after work, came back on Sunday. Whereas things like that, I can't imagine it really happening in a big DHB. It would be a nightmare to organise. And in bigger DHBs like Auckland or Wellington or Christchurch, because it's a big bustling city, people just aren't as keen to hang out within like the hospital group because there's other people to hang out with. So I think it definitely fosters camaraderie amongst the RMO unit, and that really translates into having a good work life as well. Yeah, and I think the next picture is the ball. I know a lot of other DHBs, especially up in Auckland where our partner works, they don't really have ball or anything. Oh, it's not really ball. This is our weekly quiz night. So we also get together once a week and go to quiz night. This is from last week. We won $10 for coming second to last.
I'm disappointed.
It was not our generation. Everything, you have to be like 60 plus to get.
Maybe you need to report some of us.
SMOs onto your team.
But and this is a mix of PGY1s and PGY3s in here. So it's not just everyone's just hanging out within their year group. There's a good mix of people. And in terms, this is a picture from Ball a couple of years ago. Ball's really big here in this DHB, I think, whereas I know it's not that big of a deal in other places. It's something that I definitely look forward to every year. I know lots of other people really look forward to, and it's talked about for at least a month before. And it's not just RMOs, all the nursing, like lots of nursing staff come, lots of other MDT staff come. So it's a really good place to kind of get away from work and enjoy other people's company that you work with and maybe not see outside of work. Yeah.
It's not uncommon as well for each different runs in the hospital to have dinner associated with it. So registrars will often take you out for dinner at the end of your run to thank you and also just like have time together. So they happened on medical oncology for me. It's happened on hematology for me, and urology, and on general medicine in my last runs that I've had. And in hematology at the moment, there's a dinner. Well, oncology, there's a dinner that's happening for the entire ward for everyone's invited. So, and that's not an uncommon thing socially to happen in runs here.
Yeah, definitely. And something else I just want to point out, Christine briefly touched on it, about how, not easy, but it's definitely a lot, I guess it is a lot easier to buy a house here compared to other places. And that's partially because Palmy falls under the non-urban category for getting paid, depending on if you're on RDA or STONS. Both of them have an urban and non-urban pay scale. So it's not, to be honest, it's not that big of a difference, about $5-6 grand a year. But when you compare it to how much cheaper it is to live in Palmerston North, the next slide is the average living cost here. So the average rent here is about $120, anywhere going up to $170, whereas that would be unheard of somewhere like Wellington, and you'd be paid less as well. So you end up actually saving a lot more money, and you can do whatever you want with that. And lots of people go into investing here, and right now the property market in Palmerston North is taking off like crazy. So, kind of want to get your foot in the door before gets impossible, really.
But both of you have bought houses in the last 12 months.
Yeah.
And quite a number of our PGY2s and PGY1s from last year have already bought properties. So it's definitely more affordable than it is in the bigger cities.
And what that shows you as well is people who tend to get places in a city that they're living in plan to be here for some time. So a lot of our registrars tend to actually remain here for quite a few years. It's not uncommon to have a registrar who's been here for 6 years, 5-6 years. And yes, a few of them will leave because they'll have to get training in bigger centres eventually. But I think that's kind of a testament to the fact that people will find a home here and find a place that they can enjoy living. And it's a bit seamless, but easy to live here as well. So, yeah.
And I know it probably seems like a really long way away for those of you at the moment who are sixth-year med students, but the other thing that we have done quite successfully is attracted people back as SMOs. So people who've been here as house officers or registrars have really enjoyed the experience to the extent that they've come back again when they're qualified as specialists as SMOs. So I think we must be doing something right.
Almost every specialty in this hospital has had somebody who was either a TI or a house surgeon in this hospital. So urology, general medicine, general surgery, the list goes on. So it's a popular place for people who've got to come back to eventually as well.
And I'd vouch for that. I grew up in Palmerston North since I was the age of 2, and I went away to university to become a pharmacist, actually, not a doctor. But when I came back after doing pharmacy and worked for a year here in Palmerston North Hospital, and then a couple of years later went to med school, and then I was away for another 14 years or so, thinking I'm never going back to Palmy. And I came back about 9 years ago. Honestly, have no idea why I didn't do it sooner. It's it is a city that is easy to get around. We're really close to lots of things. Within 3 hours, you can be anywhere from Taranaki, Taupo, right across the Wairarapa, Wellington. We've got a great airport. There just really is a whole lot of stuff, and it's kind of hidden. Nobody really knows that much about it, but there's a lot more than meets the eye here, I think. We're also a university city. So, we've got Massey University, and just when you were talking about having bought houses, sometimes in your training you'll need to go away, but I don't think it's not hard to rent your house out. If you want to keep your home here, there is a strong rental market. We have a lot of big infrastructure projects going on in the next sort of decade or so here, and there will always be a demand for rental property. So, you might want to rent back to interns, PGY1s, when you're a registrar, gone off somewhere to do a year or 2 of training and come back. So
definitely easy to find people to stay in the place as well if you needed to do that.
Flatmates and things.
Locals come here as well, so definitely.
Cool.
And just reiterating, I think I'm from Auckland, so I definitely know how difficult it is to get around Auckland. Being in Palmerston North and having been away from Auckland for almost 10 years now, I can't even imagine going back. Like, I live in Korero now, which is about 4 minutes to the hospital, 4 to 5 minutes by drive. I lived on the other side of Palmerston North in Fitzherbert. That's probably the furthest away you could get and still call yourself Palmerston North City. And that is a 12-minute drive into the hospital. That's bizarre to me, like 12 minutes. That means for a 7:30 handover in Gen Surg, you only have to wake up at 7 a.m. depending on how intensive your morning routine is. But, that 7 a.m. and then you can drive straight into the hospital car park, and that's like $10 a week. That's nothing. That's less than your coffee a day. Yeah, and that's whereas my partner who lives in Auckland and works at Middlemore, takes him about an hour and a half in the morning, like when he wakes up, to get into theatre. So wow, the amount of time that you save is just incredible, and it really makes an impact on your mental health and your daily routine and how much time you have left over and what you can do with that time.
Yes, you'll be tired after working. It'll hit you hardest in the first couple of months of working as well, and then you'll go into nights after 6 months too. So to have that kind of free time where you're not spending it doing something that saps you of energy can be like just immensely rewarding. And yeah, there's so many things to go see with that energy. So it's a smart decision. Cool. So just wanted to go a little bit over some of the pros of this hospital. So I just wanted to stress them again. So very easy place to live in. It's got everything you need really close to the hospital. Great places to eat, lots of gyms. The airport's right down the road from the hospital pretty much. Lots of accommodation close to the hospital as well. Easy parking. It's minimal stress. I think for me, the collegial environment is really what pins it for me. I'll walk into work in the morning, it takes me 10 minutes. I feel refreshed getting to work. I smile on the way to work in the morning. I've had lots of jobs in my life and I've never smiled going to work, never ever. So it's the only time in my life I feel like I'm looking forward to it. Food in the hospital has generally gotten better and we're still working on it. It's a work in progress and we'll probably get better. Lots of places to stay, the housing market is, yes, it's booming, but there's a lot of opportunities still there. Teaching program has been redesigned to kind of cater to people who are PGY1 in particular and soon to be PGY2s too. So hopefully we can really grow some great junior doctors from this hospital coming into the future. Clinical growth is immense in this hospital. If you want to be a great doctor, and I think be prepared to go anywhere around the world. And I've had friends who've locumed in their third year and they were nervous. They said, I'm not too sure how am I going to fare in these bigger centres or these smaller centres that I haven't been that are quite busy. And they've all told me that they felt like they were really prepared for what they faced. Furthermore from that, practical procedures is a big thing in this hospital, and I think it's renowned for practical procedures, and it's true. You can get your chest drains and your lumbar punctures and your cystic drains, and you can get to theatre. You can really get that experience hands-on if you really want to. You've just got to be willing to go out and get it. New RMO unit coming soon with great places to sleep, and I think mentoring-wise, you'll be looked after by people who are older than you, more experienced than you. And maybe have some wisdom for you as well. And I think that's part of what helps you grow into a good doctor. Now, good things to mention in this hospital, because we want to kind of create a fair sort of depiction of what you're getting yourself into. And we both work in this hospital, well, all of us work in this hospital, and we know some of the problems in this hospital as well. The good news for the problems in this hospital is that a lot of the things we're working really hard to address them. We know what they are, we're trying to address them. And I think the first one that I've written there in this hospital is, and we can let you know, I'm sure there'll be lots of questions from people about the systems in this hospital, but technology-wise, we're going through a bit of a transformational process. There is predominantly no electronic sort of resources like you'd have your med charts, your e-prescribing, your e-observations, task list, those things you may have seen in other centres. We don't use those in this hospital. So predominantly in this hospital, we have paper drug charts. So you learn to remember all the dosages of all the medications and you write them down using NZF a lot. You use renal dosing adjustments a lot. And I think in some ways it's bad because it takes up time, but also in many ways it's good because it forces you to learn the things well. We use a paging system in this hospital, which can be hit and miss. It's usually pretty good, but sometimes the pages can be a bit of a problem. We have paper sign-offs here, not electronic sign-offs for blood results. So often you get sent blood results findings and you have to sign them off and actually prove that you've seen them, which can be a bit of a nuisance. But once again, we're trying our best to sort of navigate some of these problems. RMO unit is difficult to sleep in during nights, the one that we currently have, but this isn't a problem because we're redesigning and rebuilding and we're aware of that issue. And furthermore, we're formalising a PGY2 teaching program. There is teaching for PGY2s, but it's really about trying to create something that's really catered towards the needs of those people. People don't think this is a sexy city, and look, it's Palmerston North. It doesn't have a reputation of being a sexy city. But for all of its other benefits that it has, teaching-wise, learning-wise, collegiality, enjoyment and ease of living, I just don't think that stands up as a reason for not coming here. It's a great place to work, so please consider coming to our DHB if you want to get a good experience. Great. Thank you so much to everyone for listening to all of it. And we'd love to take any questions that anyone has. So we're happy to wait for those. And yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, that's nice. Oh, thank you.
What does it say?
There's no questions, just want to say this is the most comprehensive DHB presentation I've seen yet. Thank you so much.
Thank
So,
you.
Thank you. Thank you for your good feedback.
I actually think the same thing, to be honest with you. The presentation from our PGY 1 and 2 representatives was outstanding, especially the information that you had around Māori support, pastoral support, your training schedules, and you know, it was a really, really good detailed presentation. So I'd like to say thank you for that as well.
Right, how competitive is it to get Palmy as a placement?
Great. So I think the best person to answer this will probably be you, Christine. So we'll wait for some of these to go through first, and we'll let them.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of getting a placement at Palmerston North, we do read every application from everybody who ranks us, and we do rank everybody, just about everybody. The only reason we wouldn't rank someone would be if we did have some concerns about them for a number of reasons, potentially based on, you know, feedback that we had from referees or a placement that they've had. But we pretty much rank everybody because we think that's what the system's meant to be, and therefore, if you've ranked us high, then there's relatively good chance we'll have ranked you, and there's, you know, a match. I think we're getting 21 next year, so that'll be 2 more than we've got currently.
Can I just start and cut in there? Sorry, Barry, I know you're doing your best due diligence, but your typing is just...
It's really close to speaker. Sorry about that.
Sorry
about that.
I don't think we have to type the answers.
It's all right.
I think they can hear us for the answers.
Yeah. Okay. How often do you do long days and weekends? I guess it depends on what rotations you're doing. So on general surgery, so it depends on what run you're doing and how that run's paid. So general surgery tends to be paid a category higher than medical normally. And on general surgery, it's usually because you work sometimes 2 long days a week, and other weeks you might work no long days. But normally it's usually 1 a week, sometimes 2. In medicine, it's usually 1 a week, unless you're doing a weekend, at which point you will not be doing a long day during the week. Your long day would be counted as your weekend. So 2 long days. And then for the week adjacent of that weekend, both sides, you will not have long day.
Exactly. And if you do for whatever reason pick up a long day on either side of a weekend, it's very appropriate to ask for additionals for that, because you're working more than you should be, and you can. Yeah. And for other placements, I think the community contact placement, for example, if you work in the GP and the hospice.
Yeah, so the hospice run as a community placement, they do participate in the after hours roster, but I think they mainly just have long days. I don't think they do weekends and nights, just so that they get to take the full advantage of the opportunities that are presented in a community-based attachment. And our general practice ones, you're not rostered to do any long days or weekends or nights. You can pick up additionals, and some people do, others don't. A lot of people are concerned when they go to general practice because obviously the salary drops to the appropriate category. And they say, oh, well, you know, we'll be definitely picking up some additionals. But I think once they get out there to general practice, they actually quite enjoy just being a Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 5 person. And so the majority of people actually don't end up. I think they just enjoy having that time where they're a little bit more relaxed and able to have a little bit more work-life balance.
The only other thing that's kind of worth mentioning would be ED. ED in this hospital is a shift. It's a shift-based roster. So there's different shifts throughout the day. I believe there's a normal morning shift, which I think goes from 7 till 2. And there's a more afternoon to evening shift, which is 2 till 10. And there's an overnight shift where there's usually no bosses in the ED, but you can call them in. You can call them for advice. And usually you work a weekend every 2 weeks, I think. Yeah. So it's your amount of weekends that you work in ED is higher. So it's a tough place to work, but you'll get your experience. Yeah.
They're 10-hour shifts though, so you only do work 4 days a week on average. Yeah. So you would definitely never work more than 8 in a fortnight. So you may sometimes get a week where you perhaps do 5. You might have done 4 at the beginning and then have a Sunday, say, for argument's sake. Yeah. But then that following week you would only have you'd only have 3 more. So it is quite good from that point of view. And we worked really hard. We did a lot of work on the ED roster last year so that you get the good rest and recovery when you come off nights. Previously, that wasn't so well accommodated, but you do get good rest and recovery coming off nights.
So I'll read it out. So thank you for the presentation. It looks like an awesome place to work. Thank you. Just to clarify, are all weekends two long days? How often do you work a weekend on PGY1 placements like Gen Med and Gen Surge?
Yeah, all weekends are 2 long days. So all of them are 2 long days, except for in medicine, where there's also a 3rd house officer over a weekend called the post-take house officer. So they don't actually work 2 long days. At most, they'll probably work till 4 or 5 p.m., but they will also work the long day that Friday. So it kind of makes up. So you work kind of 3 days, the Friday being a 16-hour shift, Saturday, Sunday being an 8 to 10-hour shift, whereas everybody else on Gen Surge and Gen Med will work a 16-hour shift back-to-back on Saturday and Sunday, and then be back at work on Monday. And usually you're only meant to work, I think, 3 weekends in any 12-week placement.
So our requirement is no more frequent than 1 and 3.
Yeah.
So you won't be working more than 1 and 3, but mostly it would work out less than that.
Yeah. And then also if you work the weekend, you'll get RDOs, so that you will get 2 days off in the coming week.
Unless you work, and if you work nights over the weekend, you technically have the Monday day off and then 2 further days off RDOs as well. Yeah. To kind of clarify how those kind of weekends look, it's not too difficult to kind of to explain this, because there's only really 5 shifts that you do, because you have really, for house surgeons, you have a Med A shift and a Med B shift. And in surgery, you have a Surge A and a Surge B shift. And as Shiva just pointed out, there's a post-take medical shift as well. It's not really too much importance in stressing what these involve at this stage, because you learn that really quickly when you come here. But you basically look after different wards and different sorts of patients. And some of the shifts are more notoriously difficult than others, and you learn very quickly which ones those are. So a Surge A shift in this hospital tends to be one of the busier shifts, and a Med B shift in this hospital tends to be the one where you're doing a lot more reviews of patients, as opposed to seeing patients who have already been in the hospital for a long period of time. But yeah, you learn that quite quickly, and we've got some paperwork that kind of describes exactly what each of these shifts entails. So you'll learn that very quickly. Next question says, thank you for the great presentation. Do you have advice for Australian graduates applying?
So it's really tricky for Australian graduates, because you are category 2 in the ACE system. But again, if you are an Australian graduate, I would encourage you to make contact with me, and we can have a conversation so that we're aware of you and you're aware of us. But when we rank, we can rank you, but we won't necessarily, in fact, we won't usually match, because all the category 1, which is the New Zealand graduates who are also New Zealand permanent residents or citizens, have to match first. And there will only, I would imagine, unless someone had an unexpected PGY1 vacancy, we usually only have enough vacancies to cover off all the New Zealand graduates who are New Zealand permanent residents or citizens coming out of the med school. But what we can do, both for the Australian graduates and also for the category 3, so there are people who have a New Zealand medical degree but are not a New Zealand permanent resident or citizen, we like to keep in touch with those people if they're keen to come to Palmy, because we do often have vacancies that come up partway through the year. And this year is an exception, really, in the time that I've been in the medical administration unit, because I don't know that we are going to have any unexpected vacancies. We took on a few non-New Zealand resident graduates last year and the year before. But the previous years we have had opportunities, because, things change, something happens and someone needs to move during their first year, so that creates vacancies. The other thing, which we didn't talk about, but we are certainly happy also to talk to people who need a late start. So if you've got some reason why you're not going to be ready to start in Q1 in January, again, make contact with me so that we understand your circumstances, and we are able to accommodate some late start people. Yeah. And we can certainly say that we've not been affected too adversely at all with the effects of COVID, because we're not a tourist city. So there are some advantages to not being a tourist city in that respect. But just, I know, because at the moment we're trying to amp up ready for vaccinating, and we're having difficulty even recruiting administration people to help with the vaccination program, just simply because there aren't many people unemployed in the city. You know, the employment levels are really high. And I think because we are a university city and we've got quite a lot of professionals in the city, for those of you who are coming with partners who aren't doctors, there are opportunities for them as well, which is a really important thing to think about. Because sometimes that can be a problem, obviously, if you've got a professional partner, but there are professional opportunities here as well.
I agree.
My partner's a clinical psychologist, and she found finding work here really easy, to be honest. And there's also a lot of job opportunities for people who are in the MDT staff as well. There's quite a few people in our year that have partners who are either occupational therapists, physiotherapists, etc. as well. And all of them found work very readily in this region. So it's a lot of opportunity for partners and school teachers and other things as well. Yeah.
Any last questions from our TIs, and also any final comments that our team at Palmerston North wants to add?
Just look, if you are interested in coming to Palmerston North and there's anything we haven't addressed during this, please feel free to contact myself, and I can put you in touch with Barry or Shiva, Janine, any of our other RMOs if you've got specific questions, so that you can have a real talk to someone who's here and doing it, find out if it's going to be for you.
Yeah, happy to answer any questions. So if you guys could do that, it's all good. We'll give you some good information about it, okay?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to act as a conduit. So if any of the TIs have any questions from this live session, or if you're watching it later remotely on YouTube, Facebook, or our website, then just send your questions through and I can deliver them through to the relevant people. Happy to do that as well. I just want to say thank you very much, Tino Pai Te Mahi, Kate Pai, Motea Korero. It was a really good presentation today from our team, from Barry, Shiva, Janine and Christine. Thank you very much. And no mai, haere mai. Take care and have a good evening.
Yeah, kia ora. Thank you.